So we are going live right now.
Thank you, Farah.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Farah Naushad, and I'm the Director of Transcription and Communication from the ALSA International Board. Thank you all for joining us for this special event today. Before we get started, let's take a moment to listen to the ALSA anthem.
We're standing here for we are one. Despite the differences we are having, we are the Asian, bound to be together to glorify the human race. Standing for what we believe with dedication and the guidance of God, defending people's right, bring justice to the world. Our Asian Law Students Association brings the spirit of young generation from different nations and different colors of mind to share the truth, welcoming the bright light. Justice and freedom, bring them throughout the
Welcome to ALSA On Top, our premier leadership program by ALSA International. This series of discussions is designed to help shape the leader within you. Today, we will be addressing the topic of how do we handle toxicity and foster healthy connections in the modern work culture. To kick off our event, I would like to invite Zinat Zakir, the president of ALSA International, to deliver the welcome speech. Zinat, over to you.
Thank you, Farah. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and dear delegates, good morning and welcome to ALSA On Top. Today's event is more than just a platform for discussion. It is a celebration of vision, innovation, and courage. We're here to challenge ourselves, to learn from one another, and to ignite the spark that drives us to lead us with purpose and passion. Leadership is just not about holding a position of authority. It is of the ability to inspire, to guide, and to make a difference. It is about creating a vision that others can rally behind and fostering an environment where every voice is heard and valued. As leaders, we have the responsibility to drive positive change and to empower those around us to reach their full potential. Today, as we will discuss much needed topics under leadership to improve productivity, efficiency, and to have effective teamwork. We are privileged to have an exceptional lineup of speakers and thought leaders who share insights, experiences, and strategies with us. Their knowledge and discussion will serve as a beacon of inspiration and a source of practical wisdom that we can apply in our own journeys. Let us embrace this opportunity to engage with new ideas, to challenge our own perspectives, and to build connections that will support and elevate our collective efforts. Thank you very much for joining us today. And I now hand it over back to my director, Farah Naushad, to introduce our esteemed speaker. Farah.
Thank you, Zena. Today, I would like to introduce our speaker, who is a Member of Parliament of Sri Lanka, Honorable Eran Wickramaratne. He is an economist by training and holds a degree in economics and politics and an MSc in economics from the University of London. He is also the former State Minister of Finance and held responsibility in other ministries, and was also a former banker by profession. Honorable Eran Wickramaratne has served as Vice President of Citibank and Director or is the CEO of the National Development Bank PLC. It is also known as the NDB Bank in Sri Lanka. He is also the founding chairman of the Information and Communication Technology Agency of Sri Lanka, which is also known as the ICTA. He also served as an advisor to the Ministry of Science and Economic Reform in the Board of Investments. He was a pioneer of the government of Sri Lanka's ICT-led development program, Sri Lanka. As an advisor to the Minister of Economic Reform, Science and Technology, he also spearheaded the ICT Act of Sri Lanka, and he is also the Sri Lankan Parliament and Climate Parliament Global Initiative Head in Sri Lanka. He's an active participant in the field of law, justice, and good governance. Now, without further ado, let's welcome Honorable Sir Eran Wickramaratne to deliver his insights on this very interesting topic. Honorable Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to contribute in your program. You've chosen a topic that I must say that I hadn't previously focused but taken for granted, that there shouldn't be toxicity in a work environment. So I'm going to probably speak for a few minutes, and then maybe we can have a discussion. I'm going to basically talk about what is toxicity, how do we navigate the toxic environment, what is a healthy work culture, and then how to foster healthy connections in the modern workplace. So I'm going to move you from being employee to becoming the boss of the workplace, and say how you should actually handle toxicity and create a healthy work culture. But before I get into that, I thought I would probably say a few words about the philosophy that drives it. I was listening to your president and the initial comments on leadership, and also I was carefully listening to your anthem, which also clearly propounds a particular philosophy. And I must say that I identified with the anthem and the philosophy that it propagates. Because behind, all the things that we do, there are philosophies and there are values. Now, if you talk about the work environment, right, we are largely in businesses. A few of us are in civil society and in non-profit organizations, but largely others are in businesses which have to deliver value, particularly to its shareholders. And we are measured as employees on how we contribute to that value. I mean, that's something that would be normal in how it actually happens. So what can happen over time is it can build an immoral mentality which will take over. And utilitarian considerations generally come to the forefront. For example, it's about profits, it's about return on assets, return on equity, it's about productivity, about efficiency, right? And corporate growth. This is the thing that basically takes over. So the utilitarian goals generally take over. And we forget that, we live in a world which is far more complex, far more meaningful. So if you look at moving from an agricultural society into an industrial society, these utilitarian considerations overtook everything else. And as a result, only we had, after the Industrial Revolution, we had a huge slavery trade, that people were just sent around, bought and sold, so that, they could provide the profits, the productivity, the efficiencies that were required in those industries. So, life is a lot more than those utilitarian goals. So it's about relationships. It's about the individual, and it is about social relationships. So we have individual goals, and if we confine ourselves to, like, our goals matter more than everybody else's, or everybody else's doesn't matter, then I think clearly we have a problem. We're born into families, we're born into societies, and a corporate is also a family in that sense. It's to do with social relationships. And therefore, in the workplace, our philosophy should be, we're not there just for our salary or our income. We are there for more than that. We are there. Work is important, not only because it gives you an income and food. It is important because it takes you away from idleness. It takes you into creativity. It takes you into learning, ongoing learning. And it also helps you with building new relationships in a work environment. So it's a whole lot of social activity behind it. So I thought I might just say that as the kind of the philosophy, rather than just looking at only the utilitarian aspects of work. So what is toxicity? Right? Toxicity is the harmful environment, right, that can be there at work, and it can come up for various reasons. It may be negative behaviors of individuals. It could be practices in the company which sometimes might undermine employee well-being and job satisfaction. And it could manifest itself in various ways. Sometimes it could be, harmful communication. It could be bullying, harassment, sometimes gossip about yourself, going on in the halls of the office. It could be due to poor communication and lack of transparency as well. So that it can happen for different reasons. It can source from different places. So it can source from your colleagues and the working community, or it can source from the executive arm of the corporation, the management. It can come from there. And there it can come from, the toxic environment could come from sometimes inequity. Everybody is not treated equally. Favoritism, and sometimes issues like that. So it leads to a low morale in terms of the person who is working. Or it can be just unreasonable demands, on your work. It might come in the form of goals. It might come in the form of deadlines. Sometimes the proper resources are not given, or you're expected to do more than you can physically, literally do within the work time allocated, and no more human resources allocated because the company is striving for returns and for efficiency. They're cutting the number of people working maybe, but they are overburdening you as an individual. So unreasonable demands and the lack of support can also lead to toxicity. So this is what toxicity is about, right? So what does it do as a result? It will erode your trust in the place you work, right? It'll actually reduce your productivity over time, right? And it won't be a healthy and effective workplace. So leadership is critical in actually addressing this. So as I said, there are, in these few minutes, there are two ways to look at it. One is look at it as yourself as an employee. The other way is to look at it by putting yourself in the seat of the boss. You see, and leadership is critical in actually resolving this. Even if you're an employee, you should look at it from the side of the boss as well, because one day you are going to be seated in that chair. You're going to be seated in that chair. I joined a bank as a management trainee, and I didn't think that, 20 years later, 30 years later, what seats I would occupy. But start thinking about it early as an employee, then you get a more balanced view and you get an idea of how you should actually come to conclusions and navigate yourself in your workplace. So how do we navigate the toxic environment, right? So when you are navigating the toxic environment, there are a few things maybe you need to take into consideration. One thing is your mental health and well-being is a priority. Never ever, right? Come under stress and continue to be under stress and then, get sick. Your mental health is very, very high priority. It's all a question of how you actually handle it. You see, if you have a physical problem, you go to the doctor might say, you need to be walking every day, or he might say you need to do some weights, or give you maybe even some tablets to bring your cholesterol level down or whatever, right? Similarly, stress is something, the toxic environment creates stress, is something you learn by using certain tools how to handle it. But your health, mental health is of utmost importance. So self-care. Then sometimes you have to be assertive in those circumstances, right? And you need to think strategically, what am I going to do? What am I not going to do? How am I going to actually do it? So the first thing I would say is identify the source from which it comes. Because as I said, it can come from your colleagues in the institution, right? And then you have to figure out how I'm going to handle it. Or it could come from the institution or the management of the institution. So identify the source. It can be, if it's colleagues, individual, or it can be a group. And then you need to know how you're going to handle it. Then you can set yourself some boundaries in actually handling it, right? If it's with individuals and somebody is very antagonistic and always critical of you and so forth and so on, you could limit your interactions with those people, because sometimes interacting with them continuously doesn't help. It just aggravates the situation. You take the opposite view. Rather than being negative, in your conversations, always be positive. I think that really, really helps. You see, when you're in an office, you hear most often people come and complain about the boss, or about the process, or something or the other, and they don't talk about a solution. So if they actually come with a negative, and the negative may actually be factually correct, right? You turn the conversation also going from the negative, something you have to admit sometimes the negatives are there, and say, how can we resolve it? What can be done? Whose notice should we bring it up to? Because you're trying to improve the work environment and not contribute to making it even worse. So you set your boundaries, depending on who you are talking to. Is it the individual, a group, or is it the person? Keep note, because if you can, there are two approaches in the toxic environment. One is you try to solve the problem yourself, you see, and you can do that through communication, talking to the person, right? And sometimes you may have to, if it's beyond all of those steps, you may have to bring it to the notice of either the HR, human resources persons in the company or the office, or you'll have to bring it to the notice of some relevant authority in the office. So you need to keep a note if it is something that is, I would call, somewhat serious, of what actually, because when you go to talk with them subsequently, you have to be able to say date, place, content, say. And when you meet them, talk effectively. Because a toxic environment is not just about what's generally wrong with the office, but it's something that's affecting you. So you need to be, if you're going to talk to HR or the head of HR, or, you need to basically be able to tell them and relate it personally to how it has actually focused on you. I would give another little tip. Remember that office, right, is not your only hope in life, right? It's the place you spend a lot of time, right? 8-9 hours sometimes in a day, right? But it's not the only place and the only hope. So you need to create the opportunity for your mental health and physical health. You need to have your exercise, your hobbies, and spending time with others. I might just throw in some personal tips as I go along, if it's helpful at a practical level more than theoretical. I came from a sporting background in school, and when I came into my work life or professional life, I had the habit of really doing exercises, and I continued it, right? And in continuing it, what I did was, I realized that in work life and professional life, you often don't have control over your evenings, because you go to work and you think you're going to get off at 5 or 6, and suddenly there's a whole heap of work and you're there till 8 or 9. Or your boss lands more work on you, right? And then says, I need it today because tomorrow I have to do X, Y, and Z. So in other words, you don't have control over evenings. Often you find that. Then as you get into middle management and senior management, certainly you don't have control over evenings, because it will be, going to this social, that dinner, client meeting, cocktails, etc. So what I did was, I decided that I have more control in the morning than in the evening, and it's about routine, right? When it comes to exercise and hobbies and things like that, I started doing it in the morning. So before I went to work. So it was a routine, and you did it all the time, you see. So you need that. You need that, remember, right? You don't get everything at work, right? Then you can go to HR. Sometimes if the toxic environment is such that you can't handle it yourself, you can always go to HR, right? And you can talk with them, because they have authority in the organization. So if it is absolutely out of control, right? Some companies might have a professional or an HR counselor. Otherwise, you need to basically seek some external help. If it is in that extreme situation, I think that rarely happens, but that's also an option, I would say, that is there in a toxic environment. So we need a healthy work culture. Now, a healthy work culture is where employees feel valued, they feel respected, they feel they're supported. That's a healthy work culture. Now, in such a culture, the principle of a meritocracy exists, right? And my personal experience when I was in school, I went to a government school, not a private school. I would say it was an exceptional school in this country, right, where merit largely prevailed. I hear lots of parents say today, merit doesn't prevail. Their children are playing a sport, they are the better player, but they don't get into the team. or they are not recognized for their leadership qualities, and so forth and so on. So we live in Asian societies which are often driven by non-merit. They're driven by race, caste, creed, class, and things like that. A healthy work culture, merit prevails in a healthy work culture. And I had a beautiful experience in my school, unlike lots of other schools, where merit largely prevailed. I would say largely prevailed. So a healthy work culture is inclusive and recognizes diversity. For example, in the school I went to, it was a government school, not a private school. My parents couldn't afford it. So I went to a government school because education was free. You had to learn in your national language. In Sri Lanka, it's either Sinhala or Tamil. So I studied in Sinhala. But when we went to assembly was always conducted in English. That was really important. When you look back, you say, then when the assembly started, they always read the scriptures of all the major religions in the world. The Dhammapada, the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, and the Bible. And without realizing it, psychologically, we learned about diversity and we learned to respect. It's a psychological thing. And then I go to work. And I must say in the private sector, largely merit prevailed in the private sector. And of course, as you heard in the introduction, in a new occasion, which I can tell you, merit doesn't prevail. Because, politics is driven by other considerations. It's driven by how do you get votes? You see, who can get the vote? And so as a result, politics is driven by either race, caste, creed, or class, those kinds of consideration. But in the workplace, merit must prevail. So a good, healthy culture is a diverse culture and an inclusive culture. So that's really a culture that you need to promote if you want to see the best results. That's a culture that you need to promote. I moved from middle management into senior management and often interviewed lots of young people, who came, and I never forgot the interviews I had to go for, right? And I realized that going in those interviews, that people came there, we never ever, considered the other factors I said. It was always, it's a job, this is a job requirement, this is the person's qualifications, and then the interviews went to test their attitudes and whether they had the skills and the soft skills to actually accomplish what needs to be done in the job. Finally, I would like to say this. How do you foster a healthy connections in the modern workplace? Now, if you're an employee, I want you to put your hat on now and think of yourself as the boss. Say, because when you're the employee, you're handling toxicity and trying to figure out how do I handle this situation, right? And so forth. But put yourself in the management box, that you are the boss, right? And how do you actually create a healthy, if you want, environment, a non-toxic environment, or how do you minimize toxicity? So it doesn't come from the management. If at all it comes at the individual level or among employees, which also you will have to, when you find out, you will have to handle. So the first thing I would say is encourage open communication. It's open communication. Now, from culture to culture, this varies, right? In some cultures, we don't have a lot of open communication, and that's not a good idea. You see, not a good idea. So open communication is important. I grew up in a culture, it's a typical, probably Asian culture. The teacher said something in class, we took a note down. We went for an exam and we were asked to reproduce the thing the teacher taught us and the notes we took. If we question the teacher, it was thought of as being rude. That's the culture I grew up. I know it has changed quite a bit now. We didn't grow in a questioning culture. If it was a parent, a teacher, or a religious leader, we generally didn't question them because we were told that, oh, they are elders in society and we should respect them. And respect meant not questioning them, you say. And as a result, when it came to education, we never asked questions. We only were reproducing often the things that they were telling us, you see. So open communication requires questioning. And if you're the boss, never be concerned if somebody comes and asks you a question. You know, listen, smile, be patient, right? And they may have a point, or they may not have a point. And then you have the opportunity of actually clearing it, right? So this is important. So create the environment for an open culture where people get comfortable in sharing their thoughts. Often people will say something like in the work culture, oh, if I go and say that, they get prejudiced against me, and they might penalize me, so I better be silent. So create a culture that people have trust to actually come and say things, right? So team meetings, or, you know, other activities in the workplace will actually help. So build trust and respect. This is very important. You know, trust and respect. People need to be able to know that if they come and tell you something confidentially, it will be kept confidential. Nobody else actually needs to do that, right? And then also they will have confidence that you subscribe to the principle of inclusivity and diversity, whatever their background is, so that they will feel that they can do it. Think of ways in increasing collaboration. In other words, teamwork. You see, and this is an important principle. I'll give you a little anecdote here. I started a commercial bank from its first branch. Then I took it to the market after 5 years, and I merged it with the country's national development bank, right? And then I was made group CEO of that group. And I went into my office and I sat at my table on the first day. I looked out of the glass window and I said to myself, what are you going to do different? And I was sitting there thinking. And usually, as a boss, you are given the achievements of the past, whether it's a return on asset or return on equity or shareholder value or share price or whatever, and what are you going to do different? And while I was sitting there and thinking through it, this thought came to me. And it was a very powerful thought. The thought just came to me saying, Iran, you take care of the people will take care of the business. It came very strong. And I thought about it deeply. I said, that's what I'm going to do. Because most CEOs, what they do is when they sit there, they get the people who are going to provide the returns directly reporting to them, and basically put the other functions reporting to the second level in your management structure. So normally you would take things like sales, revenue, right, and marketing, you know, and functions like that, and then you want to have an operations head or something reporting to you, and other functions like HR and all, you put it to other people. After I had that thought, Iran, you take care of the people will take care of the business. I took the chart, I took my pen, and I changed the chart. I appointed a young 36-year-old lady. I think she was 36, I can't remember, young lady. And I got her basically reporting directly to me on HR. Most companies don't have the HR function reporting to the CEO. And I told myself X percentage of time every week I will allocate to look at things related to human resources in the HR function. And I went about it like that. But the reason I told you the story is to support collaboration, you need a lot of teamwork, team building, cross-departmental work to be done, right? And to build the morale. Right? And if people know that they are valued, right, then definitely it will make a huge difference. So we went through a crisis. There was an Asian crisis. You're all familiar with 2008-9. I still remember, right, going through that crisis. And what do bosses normally do? One thing they do is they won't give salary increases. They will cut the expenditure on things like training, human resource training, things like that, because you're going through a crisis. But because I had the other philosophy, I did the reverse. I decided I can't give all salary increases. However, I decided things like training I will not cut. I invest during that period because of that philosophy, and I look for the cuts elsewhere. So people are number one. Teamwork is very important. Build collaboration, you see. And then the person needs to be at the center. Always look at the individual. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you another very clear example. Like, when somebody comes and asks for leave, I know there's a lot of work to be done. But if they ask for leave, when they're asking for leave at a particular time, it's because they have some family priority often, you say. Think of the individual. If the individual is happy and happy at home, the individual will do even better at work. So always prioritize them. And if they know that you're concerned about them as an individual, they're going to be very much more productive. Celebrate their achievements. Celebrate their achievements. Encourage a work-life balance. You see, these things are definitely going to help. I'm going to stop there because I'm sure you have questions to ask, and maybe we can take them now. Thank you again for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to share these thoughts with you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that insightful discussion. Actually, when we actually asked the participants to register with us, we also included a section where they can send us questions. And we got a whole load of questions, and I had a hard time picking the interesting questions. So I'll pose a couple of questions we received. One is, how do we deal with passive-aggressive behavior from our colleagues and teammates? And how do we stand protected of ourselves against this passive-aggressive behavior?
I don't know if I have a standard answer for that. If it is an individual, I would generally encourage a direct communication. If it's an individual, just directly talking to the person. If the person is not receptive, right, the individual, there are many different things you can do. One is, as I said, your interaction with the individual, you should lessen it with that particular individual. Lessen the interaction. If it gets to a point there, even though you're trying to do that, but still the person is aggressive, because you use the word aggressive, and it's coming after you, see, then I think you need to bring it to the notice of HR. Another little tip I will give everyone is, have someone outside your workplace, right? Ideally, a more mature person, right, who has more experience than you, or somebody whom you could talk to, because then you are able to tell them the precise details of that aggressive, even though it's passive, it can be aggressive as well, behavior, and the person might have practical insights in how it could actually be handled. So I always encourage having a mentor outside your workplace, like I encourage young people when it comes to marriage, you say, just talking to parents alone is not enough. Always you need to have somebody outside the family that you can talk to, because you will then get a different perspectives. Work is the same, not only in the workplace, have somebody outside the workplace.
Yes, I think perspective is important because it gives us a different outlook to the situation and helps us understand the situation much better. The next question is, sir, how do I get my subordinates to listen to me without being authoritative? That's an interesting question, I must say.
Uh, don't when you have to speak to somebody working for you. I didn't like using the word subordinate, but anyway, subordinate, right? Somebody working for you. What you have to say, you can say it firmly, and you can get your point through. Now, this is a ridiculous anecdote that I'm going to tell you, but I'll tell you anyway. I have a daughter, and she reminded me of this recently. She said to me recently, you never ever raise your hand to correct me. But she said, Amma. In Sri Lanka, Amma means mother. Mother raised her hand to correct me, right? But you never ever did it. And then she told me, but you hurt me the most, more than Amma. She said, why? When you punished me, you said, go and stand in that corner. You get the point? You see, right? So she told me, now she's married now, right? And then we were talking about this because she'll have to bring up children herself, right? And she said, I see what you did. You see, you corrected me, right? And it really hurt me. But if you had given me a shot, she said, I would have forgotten about it. But this lesson I never forgot. So even when you're dealing with employees who are reporting to you, you don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to shout and scream. You don't have to throw things at them, right? You treat them with respect, but you be firm in your decision. And hopefully you have researched the information. You come to the right conclusion. Don't be in a hurry. Come to the right conclusion. And if it is in the interest of the company, and you have to make the decision, stay firm, but treat them with respect as an individual. Sometimes you have to say, it might be better, you might do better in another company.
Thank you very much for that anecdote as well. I think it would have given a perspective to our participants as well. And the other question is, what are the early warning signs of a toxic work environment that leaders should be aware of? And how do we change this into a positive workplace and culture to discourage negative behavior? That's a complicated question.
Yes. Can you repeat the question again?
Yes. What are the early warning signs of a toxic work environment that leaders should be aware of? And how can this be changed into a positive workplace culture that could discourage negative behavior?
I haven't had the experience there, right? So I will only be able to speculate in answering the question. If you hear that a toxic environment is building, it may be building for various reasons. For example, maybe the company is doing badly financially in terms of returns or whatever. And employees are getting together and probably saying it's all to do with the management, let's say. So there has to be some reason that is to do with the management. Now, that's a private sector, and again, the public sector is a little different. See, because in the public sector, other considerations may be there. But assume it's a private sector, then generally they are working for returns, and returns to the owners and the shareholders and so forth. So if you discover that environment is there and try to figure out what is the reason that it's there. You see, what's the reason it's there? So if it is like they are challenging some decision that has been taken, it may be a marketing decision, an operations decision, or some other decision, it needs to be, definitely it needs to be addressed. But so you need to know the source, you need to know the cause, you see, otherwise you can't really go for a solution. And then I would say follow the basic principles. Open communication, sometimes bringing the specific leaders and talking to them directly. I didn't have a toxic environment. I'll give you another anecdote. I didn't have a toxic environment. I merged with the country's National Development Bank. I took an institution which was private sector. Actually, I bought a branch of an international bank. You see, so the culture is different there in international banking. Then I grew that into a Sri Lankan private sector bank with international standards, and then I merged it with the country's National Development Bank, which was government owned. So you can imagine trying to bring two cultures together. And then one day after I had done it and it was going well, one day my secretary came and told me, so there are some people who have come to see you. So I said, what's it about? He said, there's a no. I said, please ask them to come. So they came, they sat at the room, in my room. And then they said, so we have, 8 different problems. So I listened to them. And then they said, sir, we want to start a trade union, sir, right, in the bank. Okay. And so I took their 8 points or whatever, and I said, this one I can solve. This one I can solve. This one I can't solve for this reason. This one I can solve. This one I can't solve for this reason. And I went through all of them. And I said, everything I can solve, I said, be done. And then I turned to them and I told them, I'm glad you came and talked to me directly. That door of mine is open. I had an open door policy. The CEO's room door was physically never closed. It was always open. It was closed only if somebody came in to speak, otherwise it was open. So I had this open door policy. I said, you can always come. And I said, remember this, as long as I'm CEO of the bank, I am the trade union leader. And there was no trade union.
Okay. We have an interesting question. I think this would apply, like you would have a practical experience with this as well, with your political background. The question is, how does one minimize hatred as a leader?
Minimize hatred?
As a leader, the hatred you receive as a leader. I think the disagreements which people have of your decisions and so on.
There is a kind of a principle which says that, hatred is not overcome by hatred. You see. So I listen to what they say. I know that they are angry about something. And I think that often it is because they don't know all the facts, right? Or they don't know the background. Remember that we all come from different backgrounds. All come from different backgrounds. My mother said this to me, which has influenced me a lot in life. One day she said to me, Iran, you didn't choose to be born in Sri Lanka. You were born and you were told later this is Sri Lanka. Iran, you didn't choose to be born to the Sinhala race. When you were growing up, you were told you were Sinhalese. Iran, you didn't choose your family, your name. You were given your name. Iran, you didn't choose your father. And she said to me, never hold people responsible for decisions that they have not made. We only hold people responsible for the decisions they have made. So if hatred stems up from any of those areas, I just completely ignore it and dismiss it. And maybe those people haven't come into that awareness. And that's why they may be thinking, so-and-so has appointed so-and-so for this particular reason, not because of meritocracy, that kind of thing. So I never get there. I don't hold it. And I think that, when people come into that awareness, they will realize it. So hatred is never overcome by hatred. You continue to do the right thing. I think that's what's important.
I think you've emphasized doing the right thing over and over again in so many of your speeches before. That's something that actually drew me as well towards your speeches. And it's interesting, actually, it's really true, because when you do the right thing, your intention is right, and the outcome also will be aligned with your intention. The next question is, how can individuals build resilience and emotional intelligence to cope with toxic environments?
How can they build resilience? I would think that, don't try to do it on your own. You say, don't try to do it. I mean, you can, some people, reading helps, right? And understanding, that's also the way in which you get information. You learn from other people's experiences, how to handle things and so forth. But in a work environment, I would say that, group matters, groups matter. And having, even sometimes we dismiss the idea of group activity. Group activity is, I think, very critical and important. Then taking people away from the work environment into a more relaxed environment also helps, because it creates a group activity which helps you to build yourself up. And the work environment, the conversation is different too. Like if you go out, let's say you go out for a long weekend, as a group, that helps. So I would say in the work environment, then you need to have the proper work, family or life balance. That's very important, you say, because you get more perspective if you are balancing, and if you have work, you have your hobbies, or if you are married, you have your spouse, you have your children, right? And the work-life balance, is critical. You can't sacrifice that, only saying work, 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 because the chances are, if you're not happy at work, you lose your family also. You're going to be a lose-lose, not a win-win. So I think the work-life balance will also help in building resilience. I would say in the extreme situation, you might need some help through a counselor if you are really feeling the mental pressure and can't cope with it. Then I think talking to a counselor or a therapist is a good idea.
Thank you very much, sir. We've come to the end of the Q&A session as well. And now I'll hand it over to my director, Insan, for the thank you speech. Insan?
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity, Mrs. President Zinan. Dear Honorable Member of the Parliament of Sri Lanka, His Excellency Mr. Iran Wickramaratne, on behalf of the ALSA International, I would like to extend our deepest gratitude for your invaluable contribution as a speaker at today's event. ALSA on the ALSA on Top Leadership Program. Your insight and perspective drawn from your esteemed role as a member of the Parliament in Sri Lanka were truly enlightening and greatly appreciated by all attendees. Your participation not only enriched the program but also provided significant inspiration to emerging leaders in our community. We are honored to have had the opportunity to beneficial from your expertise and experience. Thank you once again for your time and dedication. ALSA, always be one. Back.
Thank you.
Sir, just hold on a bit. We need to take a picture with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so everyone who is comfortable, please kindly help us and like turn on your camera. We want to see your like gorgeous and bright morning face or like evening face, depending on where you are. We also have like our participants joining us from the United Kingdom as well, and some from like the Africa continent from our associated student association. So if everyone's available, you can readjust your hair or like like reapplying your lip balm or lipstick right now for those who want it นะคะ Okay ค่ะ so on the count of 3 I will take a snap. Okay, I think that would be all. Okay ค่ะ so 1 2 3 smile. Okay, and can I have another posture? With ALSA, always be one pose. So your right hand and your index finger, please. Yeah, we have our signature pose. Thank you, sir. So on the count of 3, ka. 1 2 3 smile. Thank you so much, sir. And yeah, we will proceed with the next agenda. So hand it over to Farah.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
so
sir.
much,
Have a
sir.
nice day.
Hi, Zina, do we have the next speaker on board?
Yes. Hi. So we have our speaker here. Is Imeshi? Yes, Imeshi is here.
Right.
Can we see you? Hi, Imeshi.
Hi, Zainab. Good morning, and good morning to all of you guys joining us as well.
Yes. We'll let Farah introduce our speaker. Farah.
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. We will continue towards our second part of the event. Our second speaker for today is Ms. Imeshi Sahabandu, who will be sharing her insights on the topic on how do we maintain a work-life balance in the modern hustle culture. Just a little bit of introduction about Ms. Imeshi. She is an innovative expert with a decade of experience in fast-moving consumer goods, strategy, innovation, management, design thinking, and product development for both local and international markets. She is the Senior Manager of Innovation at Hemas Consumer Brands of Hemas Holdings PLC, which is a diversified corporate in Sri Lanka with a focused interest in consumer healthcare and mobility. Ms. Imeshi, we welcome you to share your insights on the topic today. Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you so much. Can I start or?
Yes.
Okay, so a warm welcome to everybody. I think I was listening to Mr. Iran Vikramaratne's speech, and I think I learned a lot from that, especially about the part that you're the boss. And I think that gives a good segue into today's conversation as well. But firstly, thank you so much for ALSA International for this invitation, for allowing me to speak to you today. I think we have participants joining us from across over, I think, 7 countries. And so a warm welcome to all of you from, sunny Colombo. So let me just give you a brief introduction. So I'll have a couple of slides. They're not too wordy. So I hope you, just engage with me on this. And we are speaking about, I think that ask was to speak about work-life balance. So I have a little bit of a different perspective on that, which I hope to share with you guys. And a lot of it is just going to be, I think, personal experience, how we balance, what I've learned from other people, what I've learned from my peers, my friends, and also my parents. So I think it's a lot of personal anecdotes, which I hope will help you also, because I truly believe we're all bringing this here. And I know as law students, it's a very, very arduous task, and going into, I think, corporate or going into life basically is actually difficult as is, right? So, and time is the only thing that, is not like, that it's not finite. So it keeps changing, and it's like there's a very limited amount of time that we all have. And so I'll just quickly share my screen. Right. If Zenith if you could tell me if the screen is visible on
Yes, the
presentation mode.
screen is visible,ค่ะ.
Okay, it's on presentation mode as well, right? Okay, cool. Right. So like I said, I have a little bit of a different perspective to how we manage time or how we approach work-life balance. I think all of us speak about time management. I think we've done it many times now. I think everybody keeps saying, oh, you need to manage your time, you need to do this. But I think personally, looking back at many of the activities and many of the things that we have done, and I think it's a lot about energy management versus time management. So that's what I want to speak to you guys today about, how we prioritize energy over time. Yes, there are some tools that can help us to manage time, but I think it's important that we focus on how we manage our energy. And we'll get to that. So like Zinat said, I think we will have some Q&A at the end, so we can address that. But please keep sending in your questions, and we can address them towards the end, because I believe we can have a fruitful discussion with your questions and a more tailored discussion with the questions that you have. So who am I, right? And why am I speaking to you about work-life balance and time management, right? So my name is Imeshi. I'm from Sri Lanka. I live in Colombo. And so who am I? I'll just show it to you. So I have a couple of jobs, if you can say. I have two jobs, actually. So one is that I am a mother. So that is my primary job. And that's the most hardest job role and the biggest JD that there is. So I think that qualifies me a little bit to in terms of, managing a work-life balance and also dealing with a terrorist on a day-to-day basis, right? So I think that gives me a little bit of confidence that I'm able to kind of manage everything else. The other second thing, I am a gym fanatic, so which means I religiously work out. It's part of my sanity, and we'll speak about it in energy management as well and why it's important. And I think a lot of my experiences and things I'll share with you today will come from this gym background that I have. So I'll speak a little bit more about that. And okay, so just to give you an idea, I train about 5 days a week out of a 7-day week. I work out 1 hour a day after dropping my daughter to school, and I use that time and I go into my workplace where I work till 5:30 or 6. Then afterwards, I get into my full-time job, like I said, of being a mom and actually managing the household. So that's basically a rough idea of how my day looks like, so that you have an idea of my routine. Again, thirdly, I think what I do as a job. So what's my day job? So I'm a scientist, and also I'm a product designer. So for some of you who probably are new to this space, what I generally get to do, which is quite cool, is I get to create products or design products. So if you see skincare on the shelf, if you see your body wash, your soaps, your toothpaste, colognes, all of those have a science behind them, and all of those are designed and created and curated for you. So what we create for maybe an African market is different to what we create for a Sri Lankan market or even an Asian market. So my role is currently, I started out as a chemist, which means I design products, but now I'm in a role of being an innovation catalyst, which means driving innovation for him as consumer brands and looking at how we can give real-time solutions to our consumers and delighting them for their real-time problems. So I'm somebody who has to, I think, by choice or by circumstance, have to manage all of these three things. And I think I've been doing an okay job, so which is probably why I can speak to you a little bit about effective time management and energy management. But I'm pretty sure there's a lot I can learn from you as well in terms of how I can do this better. And I also have to mention that I have a lot of respect for the Gen Zs, right, who I'm speaking to. So I think I haven't mentioned my age. I'm 36. So I and I deal with a lot of people who are between the ages of 20 to 30. And I see a lot of passion in them. I see a lot of ambition, and I see a lot of drive. And I think I really want to appreciate that at this point. And I understand that is where your drive for the hustle comes. I think versus, a little bit of our generation where we're a little bit more laid back, where we have things compartmentalized, we, do things in sequence. We go to, graduate from school, go to college, get into a job, and then, maybe, get married, have, work on that. But I think the younger generation, or the Gen Zs rather, I think you have a really strong view of trying to do, a lot of things at once. And because you are so driven and so passionate about doing that. And I think that's to be commended. So even more so, the reason why time management and energy management is important. Again, so when we look at hustle, right, there's two sides of the hustle. One thing is the hustle will keep you alive, keep you on your toes, keep you updated with the trends, and also give you some sort of purpose. But there's also a downside of hustle. The downside of hustle is that you may neglect yourself in this run that, you want to, oh, I want to do my own business. I want to go up in the career ladder. I want to kind of, do so many things at once. I want to be seen as popular. I want to go out with my friends. So a lot of things. And at the same time, you have the other side of, oh, I want to save money. I want to work out. I want to be fit. But everything then starts conflicting. And then things go out of balance. So this is the downside of hustle culture if you don't focus on you. I think we looked at Iran's speech where he said, you're the boss, right? So this is, again, coming back to you and why you're in control of managing your energy in this road to, in your journey of hustle and, your journey of figuring out your passions and achieving that balance, like we said. So I think a lot of us were in tune to watching the Olympics these days. I think we just finished watching Simone Biles, be one of the best performers ever on gymnastics. And, a lot of people look at her, and she took a break as well. So she's back after a good break of, versus competing a couple of years ago. So that also gives a good entry point into terms of understanding how you manage your energy. She could have gone on for, competing continuously, but she decided to take a conscious break and focus on her and then come back even bigger, better, and stronger. So which is also another takeout for us as we discuss, work-life balance and managing your energy and time. So why is it important to balance the beam? So this beam could be life and that could be us on top. So why is it so important? But I'll approach this in two ways. Balancing your life is important for you. One, in terms of your spiritual, physical, and emotional kind of well-being. Because at the end of the day, if you are not healthy, you can't help anybody else, right? So I always remember this saying, when I'm stretched or when I'm really stressed out, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So for me, as a caregiver, as a professional, as a friend, as a confidant, it's very important that I take care of myself so that I am able to give the best of me to somebody else, right? If you are overworked, if you are stressed out, you will not be able to be present in the people that you care about in their lives. You will always be frustrated, angry, irritated, and there is no out for you. And you will always think, I never get to do things that I want to do. And then that will translate into other people. So this is two things. One thing, it's important to take care of yourself. Secondly, it's important to take care of others. You need to be present for others because we live in a communal nature, and you can't escape from that. And humans by nature are built to be in a community. So this is why two things, why it's important to balance the beam. The more balanced you are, your output also will directly correlate, and your output also will be better. So like I said before, why are we speaking about time versus energy, right? So time is basically, you can say, it's how fast you can get a task done, right? It's about, okay, I have X many tasks today. I want to get these tasks done. But whereas, what is the difference between time and energy, and how are these two buckets different? Energy is about your effectiveness, right? How flexible is your approach? And you can base, so sometimes if you give an example, if you look at 10 tasks in a day, the first task in your list might be the most energy consuming, right? And it might be, something that requires you to think for some time. It might require a lot of thinking, but whereas, so the other tasks are smaller. But if you do not channel your energy in the way that, if energy can't be managed, what will happen is for that task that requires a lot of energy, you will not be effective. The quality of your output will be different. So that is something that we have to keep in mind when we say, manage your energy versus your time. The tasks that require your biggest energy should be dealt with at a point that you have a high level of energy. right? So approach it in that way, because if you prioritize it in terms of, oh, this is the one that I can get done shortest, this is the one that I can get done the fastest, likewise. So I can share you something about myself. When I was studying law, my favorite subject was criminal law, and my least favorite subject was public law. I understand that, obviously the nuances of both are different, but I would always spend so much energy, and I was happy studying criminal law. But at the end, when I had to finish studying criminal law and get to public, I was done. And I was too tired, because public in my head was, not really sitting well with me, and I kept pushing it back. But then when I addressed public law, I was in a state of low energy, and that was not something that I was able to kind of, I think, give it due justice. So likewise, it also attaches itself a little bit into procrastination, right? We have a tendency of pushing back tasks that we don't like towards the end, but that ends up making us overwhelmed as we go. So like similar to even at the workplace, there are tasks that require you to sit down, focus, and do, but those are the tasks that we always end up saying, I will do this tomorrow, I will do this tomorrow, I will, push it back. And then before you know it, it's the end of the week, and you have to kind of meet your deadlines, and the quality of your output is definitely going to change, because you're working on those things under pressure. And obviously that output that you would have had you had time to think, maybe draw, design, everything, it completely changes. So this is why, you use your energy at a time, manage your energy at a time for your biggest tasks. Example for me, I like to work out in the morning, because I felt that's the time that I have the most amount of energy. Because going through the day in a 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 work schedule, what happens is that towards the end, there can be a lot of variables that may change towards the end of the day. But this is the personal thing. I know there are people who like to work out towards the end of the day, and that's really great, because that means they've really managed their time and their efficiency, and in terms of their energy. But I believe I want to do this in the morning, so that's cleared for me from the beginning of the day. So it's a personal choice, and I think all of you will find your footing or find your pace once you figure out how you want to do it. So likewise, right? Right. So I think most of you would have seen. This is a very famous time management kind of module. I think this is probably one of the most used. But what I'm saying is, the takeout of this is, this gives you a good idea of how to compartmentalize your brain. While I'm saying this is a very theoretical approach, I also believe that this actually helps in a little bit of a practical sense, whereas you don't have to draw a quadrant. But my approach to you, or what I would suggest to what you do is, if you start your week, have a day that you plan your week in. Having said this, there are times that I have completely bombed on this, and I have not done this, and also struggled. But the times I have done this, it has actually been very beneficial for me in terms of managing my energy and also being present for everybody around me. So when you look at this, we look at one quadrant. So it says important and urgent, right? So these are tasks that need your attention. You need to do it. So these probably need to come on top of your work schedule. So you write 10 tasks for your day or 10 tasks for the week, prioritize and say, okay, I will get this done. So this is leaving out the factor that you're going to procrastinate anyway, and probably I would say leave some time for procrastination as well, right? If your presentation is urgent and important and it's due on Thursday, make mental note for yourself to do it at least on Tuesday, so that at least it'll land somewhere on Wednesday midday, right? Because there is a propensity to kind of procrastinate. There are other things that we might have to address in the middle, so leave time for that. Important, not urgent. Again, schedule things in. You have in your head that you want to do X many appointments, you want to go to the doctor, you want to go to the gym, and then have a kind of a schedule for those kind of tasks that you have, right? The last two quadrants, which says urgent, not important, or not important, not urgent, those are tasks that you can delegate or get somebody to do, or use a service to get things done, right? So this is example of, you need to deliver a package. So in a very simple sense, do you need to deliver the package? Do you physically need to go to deliver the package? Can you send it through somebody, or can you ask somebody to drop it off? So see how some tasks can actually be compartmentalized, so that you're able to kind of address it better. And also I understand when you write your list of tasks for the day, it might seem as if you have to get all of these things done at once, and that's quite overwhelming. So I think how would you approach it is, this kind of matrix would help you stop getting overwhelmed, because when you look at it, you'll understand oh, I don't need to do these things, all of these things today. This needs to come on a Friday, this needs to come on a Thursday, this probably can come in the following week. So it helps you take stock of the task that you need to do. Again, the ABCD and the Pomodoro techniques, so I'm not going to go too much into detail because these are widely available and there's a lot of literature out there. But I would say, the Pomodoro technique helps, especially if you're a great procrastinator like me, because it forces you to sit down and finish a task at least for 25 minutes, right? Especially big tasks, right? If you have a brief to write, if you have a presentation assignment to write, this method kind of helps you saying, okay, no negotiables, you have to do this for the next 25 minutes. And you will get, if not 100%, you will at least get somewhere around 20 to 30% done. And I think that forces you to kind of put you in that mindset, right? So we're still talking a lot about time boxing, time management kind of techniques which are out there. And we'll see how that directly correlates to energy management as well, right? So this is, I think, on tools of time management, I think these are some of the things that help. Obviously, these are all amalgamations, and these are, I think they're feeding off of each other. But the takeout for this is write a list. I'm a big person in believing of writing lists. It helps from grocery list to task list to what you need to get people for gifts, how you need to, what are the things you need to do for other people, what are the things you need to do for yourself. Write it down. I think writing signifies to your brain that there is some activity that needs to be done, and that really helps, right? Even when you're studying, have a plan, just tick it off. I realize these are cliche things because these are, things that people tell a lot, when we talk about stress and, we can't manage time, and they're like, oh, have a timetable and, follow the timetable. But I think a real life way of approaching it is just have a to-do list and just keep on saying, tick it off as much as you can. Right. So we come to energy, which is, I think, more important than actually managing time. So in energy management, I would say, again, it's a lot to do with yourself. It's your spiritual, emotional, physical, and nutritional well-being. So this is a lot about your sleep management. It's a lot about your nutrition. It's a lot about of how you spend your energy, basically. Where does your energy go, right? So this is directly correlated to your productivity, and this will actually help you to manage. So when you look at energy, we have, you can look at the quadrant sort of way. You can manage your energy, right? These are short-term problems, like, suddenly there's a crisis at work, or, you have to quickly help somebody out. So those are like short-term crises, which you have to address. Then there are these buckets where you need focus. Okay, where do I get, what is my plan for the next 2 to 3 years? I know some of you must be on the cusp of, maybe joining a conglomerate, joining, the workforce, already practicing. So what is that? What does that require from you in terms of focus or focusing on you? What are my fitness goals? What do I want to achieve? So those are, again, things which are very internal, and also any soft skills you want to learn, right? So those are some of those things. Then what are the things I want to avoid? It can be even negative self-talk. Do I want to avoid speaking badly about myself? I think because sometimes we are our biggest, harshest critique. And, so I want to avoid negative self-talk. Sometimes you want to be away from energy vampires. I think it's a different space altogether, but do I want to disassociate myself from people who, drain my energy? There are times where you approach people with the biggest amount of energy and they would just take it away from you. Right? So that's one way of managing energy. I want to avoid people like that who take away my energy from me and, derail me or, demotivate me from my goals. How do I do that? Or is that something that I want to do actively? Again, limiting time-wasting activities. Again, I know people take to social media and say that, oh, you have to reduce screen time, reduce all of that, but how do we use it for our advantage? I feel Instagram is a great tool to learn things. There are a lot of little information snippets. If you look in my line of work also, you see consumer behavior changing over a period of time where their attention span is reducing day by day. Earlier, they had an attention span of about 45 seconds to watch a TVC, but now their attention span is like a 10-second, quick reel. So your attention span is reducing. And I think that's the same for us as well, looking at the swipe rate that we have on Instagram, right? So how do I limit? How do I kind of use that time to actually enrich myself while actually scrolling Instagram? Instagram is a huge place where you can get a lot of information, a lot of tools and tips. How do I use that to my advantage? So rather than me saying, you know, put your phone down, keep it away, lock it up, I'm just saying use that tool as a weapon and use it for your advantage. Right? Then how do you manage your energy? I think we have some quick tips here, and we can talk about this more when you send in some questions as well. Prioritize. So earlier when we spoke about, you know, I have a task of, you know, 10, a list of 10 tasks. How do I prioritize? So this here also means prioritizing your tasks as well. Prioritize on you, focus on your sleep, your nutrition, your health, your wellness first, because if you are not addressing those, you will not be able to address anything else or give due justice to everything else. So this is why I said prioritize. Also prioritize you, your family, and then your work. This is the sequence that I follow generally, because this is how I believe that I can be my best self for all parties involved. Another very important thing, like John Donne said, no man is an island. Ask for help. I think we're very strong as individuals. I think we all believe we can do this. We have a lot of strength where we say we want to do this task, or no, I can handle it. You know, this I can handle it is, I think, a good thing and also a very bad thing at the same time. Because yes, you can handle it, but can someone help me handle it better? Right? So always ask for help. So when I outline my profile of, you know, being a mother, being a gym rat, being an innovation catalyst, I also paint on the side. So I can't do those things if I don't ask for help. And I came from a place where I refused to ask for help to a place where I am able to ask people for help. And I think that changed the game significantly, right? Ask your peers for help, ask your friends for help, ask your parents for help. I mean, people are always willing to support you if you are able to articulate what is it that you need, right? So see how you can leverage on your support structures. Even if help also can come in the form of upskilling yourself. If there's something that you don't know to do by yourself, if there is nobody that can at that point help you to do it, upskill yourself. I think there's a lot of online resources available. So I think that is a good way of kind of upskilling yourself and kind of enriching yourself. Also, how I did an LLB or a law degree in the midst of doing all of this is actually through remote learning, right? So COVID happened in 2019. I started doing law somewhere around 2020. And I think that's how, you know, I met Zenith as well. And so I'm saying utilize it, upskill yourself, learn something new. And that's how you enrich yourself. And it's also a way of helping yourself. There's asking others for help and also kind of helping yourself as well. Setting boundaries and leveraging technology, right? So setting boundaries is very, very important. In this way of you prioritizing your energy, your tasks, it's important that you know what you want to achieve. That is one. And also, how do you communicate those boundaries for people around you? Because sometimes people around you they have the best intentions at heart, but also they also expect you to sometimes overextend. So here, I think it's a clear setting of boundaries for yourself. Have a schedule. Say that, okay, if gym is your non-negotiable, if going for a Zumba class is your non-negotiable. Again, I'm stepping back to fitness because I think that's one thing that people struggle to have a discipline to kind of stick to when I speak to people, right? So have that thing time box. That's a non-negotiable. So that's one way to set a boundary. Secondly, with your peers and your friends or your family members, share what you like to do and also tell them, look, this is how I want to do these things. At this time, I will not be available. I want to learn these things for myself, but I will actively spend time with you, on this date at this time, so that those quality of your relationships are also secured. Because, like I said, time and energy management is a lot also to do with other people as much as it is to do with ourselves, right? Even at work, it's important to set your boundaries in terms of understanding, okay, look, my active work hours are, 8 to 5. If you need something urgent, which can happen, I will address it. But as a rule of thumb, if you have sent me something beyond 5 or 6, I will address it to you the following day. And this sets a boundary for others how to approach you. They will better manage how they approach you in terms of emailing you in your working hours. And also it impacts your team as well. And it's how you manage your team as well. And their energy levels also, right? The other thing is leverage technology. I think we have a lot of technology out there. I think you probably are best placed to tell me about technology. But me, I'm just learning it myself about AI, about ChatGPT. How do you use it? Use things that are going to help you. It doesn't matter. You don't have to do everything by yourself from scratch. Leverage, I mean, AI has a lot of tools that you can use in terms of making presentations, decks. Give some part of your brain for AI to do, and you can bring in the creativity, which is what I believe. Even this whole conversation about AI is going to take away our jobs, etc. One thing that AI cannot do is replace human creativity. So leverage on that, but get AI to do the other tasks that you generally won't have the mind space or the bandwidth to do, right? So yeah, so that's my final thoughts on basically time and energy management. I think discussion part of it, I think will definitely give more kind of insights. So I think you can throw that out. But my final thing is, it does look very overwhelming at times. I think we're in a very changing dynamic environment where everything keeps changing. A lot is asked of you as young people going out there and to drive change, to be present, to be activists, to drive this global agenda. So it's not an easy task. And in the words of Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. So my final thoughts for you is that you got this, right? And all the best to you.
Wow.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much, Miss
Imeshi.
Imeshi.
Sorry, yes. Thank you so much, Imeshi, for this wonderful presentation. It was very insightful, I would say, with all the anecdotes and the presentations. And I believe our participants have reaped maximum out of your presentation. And we'll move on to the Q&A session. Pia, over to you.
Okay, so as Sina was saying, wow, very, very great session. It was very insightful indeed. And thank you so much for joining us today, Miss Inmeshi. And yeah, as Sina had mentioned, there's a lot of questions coming us from our participant saying earlier from the section, but I think you have been cover a lot of it, but just take it as like a key takeaway on what you want the participant to remember or take away from this sectionนะคะ. So the first question would be, what factors contribute to work-life imbalance in different industry and professions? And can you please provide an advice or tips that you have on regarding that question?
Okay, so again, work-life balance, I think, comes a lot down to how you manage your energy. And I think one thing I couldn't pick up on the presentation is we're all stressed, right? Stress is not something that you're going to run away from, or managing your energy. Irrespective of that, you will have a lot of stress all the time. So one of my best things I would always tell, and something that we discuss, is that you need to have a hobby. Right? One thing in achieving work-life balance is, yes, your work will give you satisfaction, but your hobbies will give you a purpose for life, right? So you shouldn't interchange the two and think that your work is your life's passion. If you're a startup, if you are doing your own business, then probably this would be different. But if you are having, you're working on a particular vertical, like in innovation or consumer business, whatever it is, you also need to find something that gives you satisfaction as an individual, right? So I know the contributing factors could be many reasons, but one way of mitigating that is to have your safe space or your out. It can, so go hard on that. I think what people forget, or as we go or as we get older, is that we drop our hobbies, right? As kids, we had a lot of hobbies. We like to dance, we like to paint, we like to play cricket. Sri Lanka is a big cricket playing country. And now a lot of girls are getting into playing cricket as well, which is great. So don't drop those things. And I think that has to come in your routine as well. If you like to go to gym, do it. That's why I spoke about non-negotiables. So gym is my hobby, right? Apart from painting and all of that. So find your hobby and go behind it, because that will give you a lot of purpose and a lot of passion. If content creation is your hobby, do it. So you will understand that you're learning something new on the side, whereas, even if work gets very stressful, there's some out for you to kind of escape to.
Okay, thank you so much. So our participant, please pick up your cricket rackets, or if you have your own scented candles DIY kit that you still doesn't leave it hanging around, you can pick it upนะคะ, as the advice for to make it's more balancing and stuff. And the next question from our participant would be, what are the most effective organization policies and practice to support work-life balance in your opinion?
Okay, so I have been very lucky to be part of a conglomerate, a local conglomerate that really kind of has a good work life or promotes a very good work life balance. So I work for Hema's Consumer Brands, so we're in the business of creating solutions for our consumers. And overall, I believe our work life culture is such that we are allowed to actually take that time for ourselves. So in terms of if you're a parent, you have sometimes you have flexi operating hours. So that also sometimes helps, and we are able to kind of attend to our personal tasks and also come back to our work and actually deliver a better output. Apart from that, at the workplace also we have a mini gym which we can utilize. We have some training sessions which we have after work, so which everybody can kind of use. Overall, our office layout is set up in a very open kind of structure. So all of these things kind of matter in terms of mindset, right? In terms of giving you the balance and that visibility. We have a lot of breakout areas to have kind of discussions with people. So that is also one way that, we promote that. Apart from that, time off. So I think we all have a very specific allocated period of leave. And I think we're all able to kind of take that at discretion, when we want to. And I think that's important, where it is an entitlement for us as an employee, but I think it's also important that we have the freedom to kind of exercise it as and when we want to. We run a couple of engagement activities throughout the quarter so that people kind of get together and do different activities. We celebrate cultural, festivals together in office. So I think overall, the culture that we have at Hema is actually, I think, should be commended. We are actually able to pursue a hobby, pursue a study, whatever we like to study. We're able to have an effective, kind of caregiver kind of role. So all of those things are actually possible while working here. So I think the whole culture that we have enabled has really, empowered people to go through that.
Mm-hmm. And I think the next question from our participants also are following up on this one. So I think we have like a future entrepreneur and business owner a lot here. So the next question will be, how can organizations measure the impact of their work-life balance initiative?
Okay, so one way we can approach that in two ways. I think one way definitely would be their engagement levels and the kind of energy that they bring into work. Yes, obviously, we're all given a list of tasks that we need to achieve in the day, but I think the energy you bring into work kind of shows how much of a balanced person you are. What is your perspective, on how you kind of approach and speak to people. So, in terms of the energy that you bring into work, that is one metric of how you do, and that can be measured probably by their quality of work as well. Yes, your quality of work can be on point in terms of what is your expectation, but how you deliver it or how you work with people, and those are kind of metrics to understand if people are actually stressed out, or are they like not really in a good space or a good headspace of energy, would be one indicator. I think overall, yes, I think that would be the biggest indicator for me, as in looking at, for the past 13 years, looking at how people operate when they are appreciated, when they are balanced, when they are nourished with sleep, active. So definitely the energy that they bring into work changes, and how they interact with people changes. And I think that is something that you pick up very fast. Also, when you recruit people with very diverse kind of hobbies, with backgrounds, that also really impacts it as well. I think at Hemas, we have a lot of people doing a lot of things. So we have one set of, we have people who are passionate about gym, who bring that into work, right? And we speak a lot about fitness and, nutrition, health, all of that. We have people who follow their, passions in terms of career. I mean, as in terms of drama and theater. So some of our marketing director is a theater buff. So he is actually part of a lot of theater productions in the country. And that shows us also in a certain way of, work-life balance, how he's able to pursue his passions while, managing a demanding role. Likewise, so all of us, I think, we've brought to the forefront our passions as well as, our hobbies, and while, at work. So I think that's also another indicator of, how, HEMAS as a workplace has enabled it.
Yeah, thank you so much. So yeah, I think that's kind of things that is like very crucial for like, the organization to like really like measures and also like deciding on whether like they could like apply any policy. So like from the first couple two questions that we have. And yeah, to the next question would be, how can individuals develop effective time management and prioritization skill? So you have mentioned the Eisenhower matrix and also the Pomodoro method. So is there like any way that you like prefer between those two, or do you think that is there like any others like tips that like we could like, or maybe like and materials that we could like go do our own like further study on this?
Right. So on Eisenhower and Pomodoro, I think both things have a lot of literature written on them. My advice to you would be just read on that and kind of see what works for you, right? So what works for me probably may not work for you. What works for me is writing down everything that I have to do at once, and for the week or maybe sometimes even the day. So for me, I write a to-do list in the morning when I sit down at my desk. This includes work plus personal things, so I don't miss out, right? On a good, this is on a good day. So I'm acknowledging that there are bad days as well where you kind of lose the plot completely. But on a good day, this having this thing really ticking off tasks and compartmentalizing tasks really help. So taking stock of, I think your tasks really help in terms of understanding. Okay, look, I have these things to do, but things don't need to be done now. So I think your brain kind of figures it out that okay, these things need to get done today. These things need to get pushed to probably next week. This thing and all of that. So that's basically an Eisenhower in a practical sense, right? So figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually brain is also one of the muscle in our body too, and it need to be exercised. So getting to do like a critical thinking or like using like Eisenhower method like also like help like exercising your brain and how it's like functioning correctly. So yeah, that's one of the things that I hope that our participant will also pick up on this and implement it to their life. And the next question, this is like the last two already. So yeah, time go by very fast, guys. So the next question would be, what are the psychology factors that influence work-life balance? So yeah, first thing would be like, yeah, you can do it mindset that you have mentioned also. And anything else that you want to add?
Could you just rephrase the question again? I'm sorry, that
Oh,
was
sorry.
small.
What are the psychology factors that influence work-life balance in general?
Yeah, so psychological factors, I think we spoke about it a little bit. I think is a lot to do with your mindset, right? So mindset also is connected to your nutrition level, your sleep levels, your hydration levels. Sometimes, okay, this is something I believe a lot of problems can be fixed if you feed people.
Yeah,
If you give good food.
absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that is a direct indicator of how people's mood changes with nutrition. And I think that's a big thing that as we, keep hustling, we forget, about our nutrition, about our hydration. And I think that's a big part. Um, so that's a psychological factor that is coming in from your lifestyle. So that's something that you might have to address, kind of, work on your nutrition and all of that. And also psychologically, this whole factor about, I don't have time for me, right?
Mhm.
Yes, where you believe yes, I can do it. But again, you're frustrated that okay, I was a person that used to sing once. I used to be a person that used to dance, and I don't get to do those things. That, find things that bring you joy and do those things. And that will impact you positively in terms of your work. So you can come back on a Monday to work saying that over the weekend, I did something really cool. I made a reel, I went to the gym, I was able to dance. So those are psychological factors actually that impact your work life balance, and what you do outside of work impacts your overall well-being and work into a large extent.
So make sure not to neglect your physical health as well, not only just your like psychology aspects, and
Yeah.
also like having that like kind of like mantra or like a manifestation to yourself that like you are like valuable, you can do it, will like very benefit you guys on like work-life balance stuff from like Miss Imeshi insights. And to our last questions, How can individuals set boundaries and maintain a healthy work-life balance in a demanding work environment? Which you already mentioned it, but yeah, maybe just like a last key takeaway, because I think that most of the people here, especially us as a law students, also like a lawyer right now, we did like prioritize our work and study as like maybe more than ourselves sometimes. So I think from your perspective, from the people who already been through what we have been doing right now, yeah, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, so I'll kind of give a mixed answer to that question. I think there's another question on the chat as well, where it asks, how can I ensure that I have enough rest and recovery? So I think it's a little bit on both sides. And and how do we get, how we find our time to kind of mix both, right? Again here, prioritize yourself. All right. So again, what I'm trying to say is, you are in charge of your time and your energy. Yes, there are days where you come into work and say, Susan, I have lost control of the day. But a lot of that you also can get the control back, right? So your schedule is yours. That's why it's your schedule for a reason, right? So prioritize you. So if you look at a work week, or if you have your tasks, find slots, book time for yourself. I understand that this is, a little bit maybe cliche that you have to book time for yourself. But if you slot it in, maybe at the beginning of the week, saying, okay, this is my rest time, right? I'm going to rest here. I'm going to use this time as focus time. So this is a tool that most business leaders and directors I've seen use. They block time on their schedule saying, this is my focus time, right? So that time is not for you to do your assignments. That time is not to do other people's tasks. That time is just for you. So it can be even going out and taking a walk and having an ice cream, right? So small things to big things, both will impact, your rest and recovery. So rest for some might be, just sitting at home doing nothing, maybe just watching Netflix. Rest for some can be just taking a quick walk outside. So sunlight is a big key factor of, a lot of the things that we do, because we spend so much time indoors. I think just going out and getting some fresh air is like paramount. So physical activity, going outside, I'm a big proponent of that. Get that in as much as possible. And also prioritize, so rest and recovery are two things that you can control, right? So rest, blocking time, recovery. If you want to sleep for 6 hours, put that time in for you to sleep, right? Devices off at maybe 9, 1 hour leading up to your sleep time at 10, and put it away. It helps. Sleep is a big proponent of how your behavior and your driving nature is. So that would be my advice in terms of rest and recovery. And also what works for me as rest, but it may not work for you as rest and recovery as well, right? So coming from a fitness kind of perspective, I can train for 5 days in a row with about 1 rest day in between. But there are other people who need to work three times a week, but more intense, with a great intensity. Find your balance, right? And I think that would be the same advice I would give you as well. Like, I understand you have a lot of pressure, but find that time for your, sleep, recovery, rest, nutrition, that bucket. Find time for things that may give you joy, right? Whether it be singing, dancing, meeting up with a friend, that's your piece of joy. So interplay between those two, I think it will help you understand in the long term, saying that, okay, I did something for me, right? It's not been always work. So putting yourself first, I would be my, obviously paramount. I think I try to address both with the question on the chat as well. I hope that helps.
Yeah, so always remember that you are the priority and always prioritize yourself. Maybe you think that maybe resting or like having a recovering time is not that essential, but actually if we're going to apply from what you said before from the Eisenhower matrix, like actually sometimes resting or like recovering phase is also an urgent and important task when you feel like very depressed or feeling very energy drained. So yeah, please make sure to prioritize yourself. And sometimes things can be wait, even if like look it's urgent. Maybe yes, it's important, but maybe it's not that urgent as you think. So please carefully like try to implicate everything that like our sessions have given to you. And yeah, that was a very insightful section. Thank you so much, Miss Imeshi. And I will hand it over to Insan to give the word of thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you, Priyan. And hello, Miss Shahabandu. Ayubowan.
I
Yeah,
go.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the ALSA International, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our esteemed speaker, Mrs. Imeshi Shahabandu, who will our second speaker at the ALSA on Top Leadership Program. So I think that Ms. Shahabandu is the professional in her department, and regarding with her extensive experience and expertise, she brings a wealth of the knowledge and fresh insight in our leadership training. Her presence here today provides us with a valuable opportunity to gain a new perspective on leadership and innovation also. We are truly honored to have Ms. Shahabandu with us, and we look forward to the invaluable experiences and insights she will share in our event today. And once again, I want to say thank you, Ms. Shahabandu, for joining with us and for your contribution to our program. ALSA, always be one.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This is a great program. Actually, I learned a lot preparing for this as well. So thank you so much for having me. And last final bits, everybody is winging it out there. So, be kind to yourself and all the best.
Thank you so much, Miss Imeshi. And for our dear participants, if you're available, please kindly turn on your camera so we could take a picture together. You kindly apply your lipstick, lip balm, readjusting your hair, combing a bit if you want right now. But yeah, please kindly show us your beautiful and gorgeous face, Naka. I think we are so keen as an organizer to see you guys joining us and commemorate this section together.
And especially since all of you have stayed with us through both the sessions, it'll be lovely to recognize you on our social media as well. So yes, go ahead, turn on your videos.
So I think that would be all for now. So on a count of three นะคะ Okay, people keep turning on the camera. We want everyone if possible นะคะ so
Yes.
don't be shy. Show your beautiful and gorgeous face to the world. And remember that you can do it. นะคะ everyone, you can do it. And with ALSA always be one pose as well. Okay ค่ะ so on the count of three นะคะ also I'll run first for first. So on your right hand and with your index finger, please. Okay, so on the count of three, 1, 2, 3, smile. Thank you so much. And can we have like a normal posture, a freestyle one? You can do like, mini heart if you want. We wouldn't mind that. Okay, so on the count of three, ค่ะ 1, 2, 3, smile. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Meshi. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Zenith, and all the best for your program. Thank you.